Your silence isn't just silence to her. It's a storm, a signal, a story she starts telling herself. A man may think that pulling away is a shield, protecting his pride, his power, his peace. But in her world, silence is not stillness. It's a shifting sky that carries the weight of thunder she can't see, yet feels in her bones. And in that unseen storm, the ground beneath her begins to move. This isn't about playing mind games. This is about the unseen cost of miscommunication and the emotional intelligence it takes to lead without leaving scars. Because silence in her mind is never empty. It's loud, and it writes a story you may not like the ending of. Start this journey now. Like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station so you don't just hear these truths, you live them. Drop a 1 in the comments if you've been on the giving end of silence, or a 2 if you've been on the receiving end. I read them all. And stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear will make you see the meaning of your silence in a way you've never seen before. Now, let's dive in. On the meaning of silence from a woman's perspective. You may think your silence is peace, a sign of composure, of strength, of being in control. But to her, it's not stillness. It's a storm without warning, a sky that shifts without a sound, yet carries the weight of thunder in the distance. Most men believe stepping back is a neutral act, a way to gather their thoughts without causing harm. But in her world, silence is never empty. It is filled to the edges with questions that have no answers, with meanings she has to guess at, with stories her mind begins to write in the absence of your voice. Picture this. You're standing in a quiet field, the air calm, the horizon clear. For you, it's a moment of stillness, a reset. But for her, that same field is blanketed in fog so dense she can barely see her own hand. You breathe deeply. She holds her breath, searching for landmarks that no longer appear. Where you see space, she sees disconnection. Women are wired for connection in a way that isn't just emotional, it's biological. Attachment theory shows us that emotional withdrawal registers in the brain much like physical danger. Your silence isn't just space to her, it is an alarm bell her nervous system can't ignore. And in that void, her mind doesn't slow down, it accelerates. She starts shadowboxing fears that your words could have cleared away in seconds. She wonders if you're losing interest, if you're disappointed, or if she crossed a line without realizing it. The silence becomes a mirror that reflects every fear she's tried to suppress. If you truly need space, name it and frame it. Tell her, I'm going quiet for a day to think, not because you've done something wrong. You're not over-explaining, you're removing the knife of uncertainty from her chest. Clarity doesn't weaken you, it strengthens the ground you both stand on. A Stoic doesn't hide from difficult conversations, he shapes them with intention. A man must master himself before he can master the moment. If you choose silence, make sure it's not mistaken for absence. Because in the absence of your voice, she will write a story, and you may not like the ending she gives it. 2. The impact of silence on her sense of self-worth. A single cold response can undo months of warmth. It can make her question not just where you stand, but who she is in your eyes. She doesn't just hear your silence, she sees it reflected back at her every time she looks in the mirror. And in that reflection, her sense of worth begins to bend under the weight of your absence. From an early age, many women are taught, directly or indirectly, that their value is measured by the strength and consistency of their emotional connections. So when you step back, it's not just a pause in the conversation, it's the slow fading of her own reflection in the gaze she once trusted. The male mind can place stress in a box, separating it from love, from attraction, from connection. But the female mind often weaves these threads together. Neuroscience tells us that silence can trigger dopamine withdrawal, the same neurological discomfort as breaking a habit. It's why your absence doesn't feel neutral to her. It feels like loss, like a reward suddenly taken away, making her crave reassurance just to feel steady again. Without realizing it, she starts reshaping herself to fit the new space between you. She sends fewer messages, softens her tone, bites back opinions she once voiced freely. This isn't because she's lost interest. It's because she's trying not to tip the balance further, trying not to scare you away when she senses the ground beneath her already shifting. If you need to retreat, anchor her with a single point of contact. It could be a brief call, a one-line message, enough to let her know your distance isn't a verdict on her worth. This is not weakness, it's strategic leadership. It's understanding that strength isn't in disappearing completely. It's in maintaining a thread of connection so trust doesn't fray. You cannot expect her to feel secure in your presence if she feels invisible in your absence. And here's the truth most men miss. Your silence doesn't just test her patience, it tests the story she tells herself about her value. If you leave that story unwritten, she will write it without you, and you may not recognize the man she casts in the role. Third, filling in the blanks. When no answers come, when you say nothing, she writes the ending herself, and the ending she imagines is rarely the one you would choose. The human brain is wired to despise uncertainty. For her, that discomfort doesn't just sit quietly, it drives her to invent reasons for your silence, and those reasons almost never put you in a favorable light. You might be busy, you might be thinking, but without clarity, her mind shifts into overdrive. She becomes an investigator in her own relationship, rereading your messages for hidden meanings, studying subtle changes in your tone, and even scanning your online activity for signs that match the story she's building in her head. This isn't paranoia, it's biology. Psychology calls it social threat perception, the brain's way of treating emotional distance as danger, and danger demands action. That's why silence isn't neutral in her mind, it's an alarm. Once it sounds, she starts constructing scenarios. You've lost interest, you've found someone else, or she's somehow become less than the woman who once held your full attention. Each imagined possibility feels like a small betrayal, and each one is a cut she delivers to herself in the dark. You don't see it, but it's happening. Every moment of unanswered uncertainty is another blank space she feels compelled to fill. And the tragedy is, the more time she spends in that silence, the darker and more convincing her imagined story becomes. By the time you speak, she may already have decided what the truth is, and in her mind, it will feel real, because she's lived with it longer than she's lived with your actual explanation. This is where a disciplined man must lead himself before he can lead a relationship. One of the most powerful Stoic practices you can apply is self-auditing before you pull back. Journal your reasons for needing space. Ask yourself, is my silence protecting my peace or avoiding my responsibility? That one question can keep you from turning temporary distance into permanent damage. If your silence is about peace, define it so she knows the battle isn't between you. If it's avoidance, face the conversation you're trying to escape. A man who owns his words never fears their weight. The more blanks you leave, the more nightmares she will create to fill them. If you take ownership of your voice, you control the story, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that replaces uncertainty with clarity. In relationships, the space between words is as powerful as the words themselves. Make sure the space you create isn't one she has to survive. Because if she's forced to write the ending alone, you may not recognize the role she casts you in when the final chapter closes, and by then it will be too late to rewrite it. 4. Insecurity needs no evidence. You don't have to betray her for her to feel betrayed. Sometimes all it takes is one unanswered message, one shift in your tone, for years of buried doubt to rise to the surface. Her mind doesn't wait for proof, it only needs a crack. And once that crack appears, everything she has ever feared can pour through it. Your silence doesn't just belong to this moment. It's tied to every ghost her heart has ever met. Broken promises, past rejections, moments where trust was given and then taken away. When you go quiet, you're not only dealing with her reaction to you, but with the shadows of every man who came before. You may see her as too sensitive, but in her eyes, you're rationing what once flowed freely. That shift is brutal because love, once abundant, now feels conditional. So she starts protecting herself the only way she knows how, by shrinking. She compares herself to other women in your life, edits her texts before hitting send, and holds back her laughter or her opinions for fear of being too much. She isn't doing this because she's weak. She's doing it because she feels the ground shifting beneath her and is trying to stand without falling. The difference between space and abandonment often comes down to a single sentence. Reframe your silence before it grows teeth. Say, "I'm processing, not pulling away." Those few words can turn a threat into a reassurance, separating your need for solitude from her fear of being left behind. A Stoic understands that protecting peace isn't just about guarding his own. It's about safeguarding the peace of those he chooses to keep close. And if you value her, you'll remember this. It's not always the betrayal she fears, but the quiet in which she's left to imagine it. If you don't guide her understanding, her mind will, and the version she believes may be the one that pushes you further away. 5. When women go silent. 2. Her silence isn't a mirror, it's a wall. And if you think she's matching your distance, playing the same game you are, you're already misunderstanding the point. She's not trying to win or outlast you. She's done speaking into a void that never answers back. Every time she tried to open her heart, she was met with misunderstanding, deflection, or worse. A sense that her feelings were an inconvenience you didn't want to carry. So she stopped. Not because she stopped caring, but because at some point, self-preservation demands that you stop handing your voice to someone who won't hold it safely. When a woman reaches this point, her silence is no longer a gap in the conversation, it's armor. Behind that armor live unsent messages she wrote and deleted, tears she held back because she knew they would be met with indifference, thoughts and hopes she wanted to share but learned would go unheard. This is not the absence of emotion. This is the weight of too much emotion carried alone for too long. She still sees you. She still notices the way you walk into a room, the way you look at her, the shifts in your tone. But her quiet now is a calculated choice. It's the safest way to exist around someone she no longer trusts to handle her truth. And here's the part you might miss. She hasn't completely stopped caring. She's still watching, still hoping on some level that you'll notice the shift. But the difference is, she no longer believes that speaking will change anything. She has learned that pouring herself into words only empties her, while leaving you unmoved. So she retreats into her silence, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as the only way left to protect her dignity. If you sense her pulling back, this is the moment where most men make one of two mistakes. They either ignore it, hoping it will resolve itself, or they rush in with interrogation and performative apologies designed to reset the balance quickly. Both approaches fail. Ignoring her confirms her belief that her absence doesn't matter. Interrogating her makes her feel cornered, pressured to speak before she's ready. Apology theater, grand words with no meaningful change, only deepens the distrust. The only move that matters here is presence, not defensive explanations, not sudden emotional outbursts meant to drag her back into vulnerability. Presence means you stand there without trying to control the outcome, without trying to steer the conversation in your favor. It means looking her in the eye and asking a question very few men are willing to ask. Have I made it unsafe for you to speak? And then you stay quiet. Not the kind of silence that withdraws, but the kind that holds space, so she can answer honestly without fear of interruption or argument. That single question, asked with sincerity, signals something powerful, that you value her voice enough to wonder if you've damaged its place in your life. And it shows you're willing to take responsibility, not just for what you've said, but for the environment you've created. In Stoicism, the strongest fortresses are built from within, but the wisest leaders keep the gates open for those they value. If she has built a wall, it's not because she dreams of living behind it forever. It's because she has learned she cannot afford to leave herself exposed in a place where her vulnerability becomes a liability. You can't tear the wall down by force. You can only prove over time that on the other side of it she'll be met with respect, safety, and genuine interest, not just in her presence, but in her truth. The question is whether you have the courage and the patience to stand at that gate without walking away. Because once her silence becomes home, getting her to leave it will require more than words. It will require proof that this time she won't be speaking into a void. And if you can give her that, you won't just hear her voice again. You'll hear it without fear. And that changes everything. 6. Feeling you let go without saying it. She doesn't need the breakup speech. Your energy already gave it. She reads it in the shorter replies, in the questions you no longer ask, in the way your laughter now stops short before it reaches your eyes. You may still be physically present, your name still lighting up her phone, but emotionally you've drifted light years away, and she feels it every time her words hit a wall instead of passing through an open window. She tells herself you're tired, that work is heavy, that your mind is simply elsewhere. But the human heart knows when detachment is permanent. It's in the tone you no longer use, the pauses that weren't there before, the warmth that used to arrive uninvited but now feels rationed. And the cruelty of quiet detachment is this: it makes her doubt herself before she ever doubts you. She will comb through her own actions, wondering what she said or didn't say, what she did or didn't do, long before she questions whether you are simply letting go. If you are letting go, own it with dignity. Don't let her slowly bleed from the wounds of your silence when the truth could set both of you free. And if you're not letting go, then your presence must match your words. A Stoic faces endings with the same clarity he faces beginnings, not hiding, not drifting, but speaking with the honesty that respects both hearts. Because silence without clarity is not peace, it's erosion. It wears away trust grain by grain until nothing stable remains. Protect what is worth keeping with action, or release it with honor. But do not leave someone in the purgatory of your distance, hoping for a future you've already decided against. If she feels you slipping away, it's because part of you already has. And the longer you stay quiet, the more certain she'll become that she's right. Men, understand this. Silence is never just the absence of words. In a woman's world, it carries weight, tone, and meaning you may not intend. I've just walked you through 6 ways that silence shapes her perception, her self-worth, and the very story she tells herself about your relationship. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about leading with clarity, even when you choose quiet. If you pull back, know why. If you need space, define it. If you're letting go, do it with the same dignity you'd want if the roles were reversed. A woman who matters deserves certainty, not erosion. Your silence can either be a tool of leadership or a weapon that wounds without a touch. The difference is intention. Here's the truth. A Stoic man doesn't speak just to fill the air, but when he does, his words remove doubt. He protects not only his own peace, but the peace of those he values. If you master this balance, your quiet will never be mistaken for absence. It will be understood as strength. And in relationships, strength isn't in disappearing. It's in staying present enough that she never has to guess where she stands. If this message struck a chord in you, give this video a like and subscribe to Stoic Station. Now, don't stop here. Your momentum is far too valuable to waste. The next step in reclaiming your ground is already waiting for you. Click the next video on your screen right now and keep walking the path toward the man you were meant to become. The choice is right in front of you, and the clock is ticking.